they're skilled craftsmen, and they can hire scabs and so on. So unskilled labor becomes identified as the enemy of the AFL, and at least by 1910, the AFL is behind, signs on and is or more like 1900. Samuel Gompers gets behind the Immigration Restriction League and joins joins the pro-literacy test. I keep pointing to this box because these are the guys behind the literacy test, but this is not the literacy test box, right? So I'm confusing myself. This box is also an interesting group of people. We're looking here at the National Association of Manufacturers, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, William Howard Taft, and of course Andrew Carnegie. So they're free market expansionists, if you like, but they're also social Darwinists. They would know themselves and call themselves social Darwinists. Andrew Carnegie was happy to have that label. They are economically aligned, of course, with business, so they want to hire immigrants. So while they're not particularly concerned with the rights of immigrants, they're definitely on board for more immigration. Carnegie got rich by hiring a lot of unskilled immigrant labor. Carnegie was himself an immigrant as well. So it is somewhat of a coup that these guys, whom we'll turn to shortly, managed to convince industry, whose interests are clearly in immigration and labor, who have a complex relationship with immigration, to join them in the literacy test, on the yes side of the literacy test. Okay, so let's turn then to who this Immigration Restriction League is. They were founded in 1894 by 3 Harvard graduates with very wasp names. Charles Warren, Prescott Farnsworth Hall, and Robert de Courcy Ward. Okay? They also have secret members because when they are founded, their position is pretty extreme. The idea that immigration should be restricted is not, it does not immediately catch on. 10 years later, they'll be seen as the mainstream, and that's largely because of their skill. But nonetheless, they're seen as controversial enough when they're founded that people like Henry Cabot Lodge and Lawrence Lowell do not immediately announce that they're members. So they think that they are more effective as outside. They're more effective not being seen as part of this group. The group is a think tank and a lobbying organization, and that again is something new for the early 20th, actually late 19th century. They're not a secret organization like the Know Nothings. They're not a political party as the Know Nothings become, but they are just a small group of people who are extremely well connected and who understand statistics pretty well, and they're progressives. Essentially, they're progressives, and they ultimately turn to promoting numerical limits after 1918, which is the story of our next lecture. But their early stalking horse, their main goal originally is this literacy test, which they understand very well to be a way of reducing immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. They go to Ellis Island early on, and they test, and they do a literacy test, and they satisfy themselves that, in fact, literacy is very, that most Southern and Eastern Europeans are less likely to be literate. We're talking literate in any language. It's not literacy. There's an extreme, there are extremists at this point who want to limit it only to literacy in English, but that's really not what's on the table. They're promoting a test of literacy in any reasonable language. And they do know in their hearts that they're talking about reducing immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe, but they also know that it's not good politics to offend people that way. So promoting the literacy test seems more scientific, it seems cleaner, and it seems less likely to annoy some of those ethnic organizations. So it's a clever idea. And they succeed in getting it, at least on the floor of Congress, all these times, and several times at least. It passes both houses either as an amendment to something or as a law in and of itself. But as you say, it gets vetoed, and finally the veto's overridden as part of the 1917 Immigration Act, which we won't get to. The social Darwinists, who we mentioned, let's go back here a second, remind us, these are the social Darwinists, talking about Andrew Carnegie, business guys. Okay, they're also an important part of this mix. Carnegie is a very well-known figure and a popular one in many respects as well. This is kind of an era when capitalists are sort of rock stars. So social Darwinism is, well, it's a pithy summary right there. It's that society should, or does, function as a jungle. The weak, the poor, should perish in order that the strong and the society as a whole should thrive. And that's kind of the pithy version. That's the version that is popular in the United States. And when we say social Darwinists, this is what they were thinking and what we want to recognize. But we should also recognize that the origin of the term is from Herbert Spencer, who had a much more complicated idea. He was talking about societies evolving into more and more heterogeneous organizations. So survival of the fittest was really used for societies rather than individuals. And Spencer, you should note, he publishes this in 1851, which is 8 years before Darwin. So while it becomes known as social Darwinism, we really should be talking about natural Spencerism if there was any justice in academia, which there isn't. So this jungle theory is the one that, as it crosses the Atlantic, it gets translated into, and it's very self-serving for people like Andrew Carnegie, right? Because the idea is, well, I'm pretty rich, I must be fit. But Carnegie in many ways is more faithful, more consistent in this than one might think. I mean, might think that this is just some promotion. It's just proof that rich people are good. But here's Carnegie. Here's a quote from Carnegie on the estate tax. Quote: "The growing disposition to tax more and more heavily large estates left at death is a cheering indication of the growth of a salutary change in public opinion. Of all forms of taxation, this seems the wisest. Men who continue hoarding great sums all their lives, the proper use of which is for public ends, would work good to the community, should be made to feel that the community, in the form of the state, cannot thus be deprived of its proper share. By taxing estates heavily at death, the state marks its condemnation of the selfish millionaire's unworthy life." And beyond providing for the wife and daughters moderate sources of income and very moderate allowances, indeed, if any, for the sons, men may well hesitate, for it is no longer questionable that great sums bequeathed often work more for the injury than for the good of the recipients. Okay, so I'm saying that Carnegie is not entirely self-serving in his social Darwinism, but it's interesting to consider what the implications of this policy would be. If you're a social Darwinist and you really believe the story, why wouldn't you want free and open immigration? Why would you want any kind of limitation, right? Because we got a jungle here. The more competition, the better. Bring them on. That really is the implication. I think that's the logical implication of this theory. But the problem is the race suicide problem, which we've seen already in the form of Francis Walker. Remember Francis Walker from before the break? That's the piece of the puzzle that turns the social Darwinists into restrictionists. But this guy, Madison Grant, is much more mean-spirited than Francis Walker. Walker does not make eugenicist arguments. He's simply looking at the numbers, recall, and he's making it at best sociological arguments for people making decisions about different fertility outcomes. Madison Grant is much worse. I should say he's much more eugenics-minded. What the melting pot actually does in practice can be seen in Mexico, where the absorption of the blood of the original Spanish conquerors by the native Indian population has produced a racial mixture which is now engaged in demonstrating its incapacity for self-government. Okay. So you have here the idea of racial incapacity for self-government, which is not something that we would necessarily pin on Francis Walker. This was a very, very popular book, The Passing of the Great Race, and it is, I believe, even cited in The Great Gatsby. I mean, it's referenced in The Great Gatsby, I think. It's influential and popular, but this idea, combined with the social Darwinist idea, leads you to this problem that if you let everybody come over, the unfit ones might not die soon enough. So thus the necessity, perhaps, for immigration control. You don't need to worry too much about it. Let's fast forward now to 1907, and this is the interesting story, I think particularly interesting in what happened last week with the healthcare bill. The question here is what happened with the Immigration Act of 1907. And the provisions that actually passed were a head tax. That's the only new thing. Everything else here you've seen before. Idiots, imbeciles, feeble-minded, felons, polygamists, anarchists, contract laborers, once again. Okay. And I think another page. And, right, you can't encourage anybody to immigrate. And this takes us into the president is authorized to refuse admission to certain persons whose presence would be detrimental to labor conditions. Oh yeah, this is, guess who this might be? It's hard to guess, but it will become actually clear in a second. Remember this. We'll explain that in a second. So what about the literacy test? The literacy test was, I should say, enthusiasm for the literacy test was clearly building at this point, and the IRL was quite sure that this was their year. This was the year they were going to get it passed, and it was definitely in the House and the Senate bill. But there's the fifth side of this debate, which is a guy named Joe Cannon, who's the Speaker of the House from 1903 to 1911, and he represents kind of he represents really a fifth side. He's just an anti-progressive. I guess he's the one exception that I said earlier that nobody would call themselves a regressive. Cannon might have, because he says, I'm goddamn tired of listening to this babble for reform. America's a hell of a success. He's a politician. He's from Chicago. So he has a lot of immigrants in his district, and he's a lot more powerful in 1907 than Nancy Pelosi was in 2010 or is in 2010. He controls committee appointments. He is the Rules Committee. So he can decide. He has an immense amount of power. And the way he abused it in this particular instance had something to do with how those rules were changed shortly after. But in any case, what happened is the 1907 law passed, and Joe Cannon was sufficiently angry about it that he first made a rule, because he could, it was the Rules Committee, that there would only be one amendment allowed when it got to the floor, and then he decided who would offer that amendment, and it would, of course, be one of his cronies. And so the amendment that was offered was that the literacy test would go, and in place of that would be a commission to study the problem again. This was, that commission ultimately became the Dillingham Commission report that I mentioned, that 41-volume work. But this, of course, infuriated everyone who was for the literacy test, which was a substantial majority already in the House. And he wound up twisting arms and making people vote over and over again, and he finally got it passed in his form, but that left it to go to conference committee, which, as you'll recall, is where the healthcare bill languished for several months. In this case, the two bills were in committee for 8 months, and among the committee members were Henry Cabot Lodge, who, as I said, was an early self-member of the IRL, Immigration Restriction League, and he was dead set on the literacy test, and that's what stalled him for 8 months. He wanted to reconcile the bills to include put the literacy test back in, and while they were haranguing, it was essentially a stalemate. But while they were arguing about it, the school board of San Francisco decided that Japanese children should be segregated with the Chinese, and they did that. There were only a handful, less than 100 Japanese students in the San Francisco school district, which had, I think, 25 or 50,000 at the time. So it was a very small number of students. It was a very gratuitous piece of work, but it infuriated the Japanese government, as you might imagine, and that terrified Teddy Roosevelt. Because the politics at this time, this is 1907, so 2 years after the Russo-Japanese War, wherein the Japanese, who are clearly a rising power, defeated the Russians, triggering the 1905 failed revolution in Russia, but also a real wake-up call to Europeans. This was the first time that a non-European power had defeated a European power. So it was, again, a lot of race anxiety at that time. Teddy Roosevelt hilariously got a Nobel Peace Prize for mediating that war. And if you know much about Teddy Roosevelt, he was not a peaceful man. He was definitely liked violence. So I don't know what he did with the Peace Prize, but in any case, he did negotiate the end of that war. At the Peace Prize, he also had a real deep respect for the Japanese as a rising power, one that he did not want to offend. So what happened to the literacy test here is that Teddy Roosevelt twisted arms, particularly the arm of his friend, Cabot Lodge, to take out the literacy test and put back that provision. This one about the, I should say that the president is authorized to refuse admissions to certain persons, and those persons are Japanese. And with that, he then twisted the arm of the San Francisco school board with the promise that he would do something about Japanese immigration. What he did ultimately was known as the Gentleman's Agreement, in which the Japanese government agreed not to allow Japanese laborers to immigrate to the United States, and in return the United States would not limit Japanese immigration, which would have been seen as a humiliation for the Japanese, insult to the Japanese. Okay. So, are there any questions about that? Good. I'm glad it made sense to you. Okay. Then we'll see you Wednesday. Yes. Oh, sorry. One other thing. We have lab 2. So, well, let's try to pass them out here. Otherwise.